Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, we'll cover social influence in psychology, focusing on three main ideas: conformity, compliance, and obedience. Social influence means a change in our thoughts, feelings, or behavior because of real or imagined pressure from others. It happens when we see others doing something, when we are asked to do something, or when we are ordered to do something. Let's start with conformity. Conformity means changing our behavior or opinion to match a group, even if privately we know it may be wrong. The most famous study on conformity is Solomon Asch's line experiment. Asch wanted to study how group pressure affects an individual's tendency to conform to a clearly wrong majority opinion. In the experiment, participants were told it was a vision or perception test. Each real participant sat in a group with 7 to 8 confederates, that is, people who were actually working with the experimenter. On each trial, everyone saw a standard line and three comparison lines, A, B, and C. The correct answer was obvious. The Confederates deliberately gave the same wrong answer on 12 critical trials. The real participant was asked to answer last so they could hear everyone else's response first. About 32 to 37% of participants confirmed and gave the wrong answer at least once. Only about 25% never confirmed. The rest confirmed at some point. When participants answered privately without group pressure, conformity dropped sharply. This experiment shows normative social influence. People confirm to be liked and accepted by the group. Now let's move to another type of conformity: norm formation in ambiguous situations. This is shown in Sherif's autokinetic effect experiment. Sherif wanted to study how group norms develop when the situation is ambiguous and people are unsure what the correct response is. In a dark room, a small dot of light is projected on the wall. Because of the way our eyes work, the light appears to move. This is called the autokinetic effect. First, participants estimated the distance the light moved alone. Their individual estimates varied widely. Then, the same participants did the task in a group where they could hear each other's answers. Over time, the participants' estimates converged into a common range, a group norm. Even when later tested alone, they still gave estimates close to the group norm they had experienced earlier. This shows informational social influence. People use others' opinions as information when they are uncertain. Ambiguity leads to stronger conformity and the formation of stable group norms. Now we move to obedience. Obedience means following direct orders or commands from an authority figure, even if you feel uncomfortable. The most famous study on obedience is Stanley Milgram's shock experiment. Milgram wanted to study how far people will obey an authority figure, even when asked to harm another person. Participants were told it was a learning and memory experiment. They were assigned the role of teacher, and a confederate played the role of a learner who was supposedly learning word pairs. The teacher had to administer electric shocks to the learner every time the learner made an error. The shock levels increased from 0 to 450 volts in 15-volt steps. The learner was in another room and the teacher could not see him but could hear him. The learner was actually a confederate and did not receive real shocks, but he pretended to be in pain, shouted, and eventually stopped responding. The experimenter, in a lab coat, stood nearby and urged the teacher to continue with phrases like, "Please continue. The experiment requires that you continue. You have no other choice. You must go on." About 65% of participants went up to the maximum 450-volt shock. Most participants showed clear signs of stress. They sweated, trembled, or protested, but still obeyed. Obedience decreases when the learner was present in the same room or when the authority figure was not visible, and increased when the setting was prestigious and responsibility was diffused. Milgram's study shows obedience to authority and the agentic state. People shift responsibility to the authority figure. It reveals that ordinary people can perform harmful actions under strong authority pressure. Now let's talk about compliance. Compliance means agreeing to a direct request from someone even if you don't fully believe in it. Compliance is different from conformity and obedience. Conformity is about matching a group norm. Compliance is about agreeing to a request. Obedience is about following an order. Influential work on compliance comes from Robert Cialdini and other researchers who identified several compliance techniques that make people more likely to say yes. The first technique is foot in the door technique. The foot in the door technique means first you get the person to agree to a small request, then you ask for a larger request. Because they have already said yes once, they are more likely to comply with the second request. The second technique is door in the face technique. The door in the face technique works in the opposite way. First, you make a large, unreasonable request that the person will likely refuse. Then, you follow up with a smaller, more reasonable request. The person is now more likely to agree to the smaller request as a kind of compromise. The third technique is lowballing technique. It is a powerful compliance strategy where the person is first offered an attractive, easy request, a lowball offer. They agree to it. After they commit, the requester changes the terms and makes the request more difficult or costly. Yet many people still comply because once people commit, they feel bound by that commitment and want to appear consistent. They also don't want to look unreliable or change their mind after saying yes. Another technique is reciprocity. Reciprocity means people feel obliged to return favors. When someone gives us something, a free sample, a small help, we feel a social pressure to say yes to their later request. Other important compliance principles include liking. People are more likely to comply with people they like or feel close to. Secondly, authority. People are more likely to say yes to someone who appears expert, powerful, or official. And the third one is social validation or consensus. People are more likely to comply if they think everyone else is doing it.